Subscribe now and witness how an arrogant man loses absolutely everything on the night of his absolute triumph by underestimating the woman he thought he had discarded. Act 1. The Trial at the Museum. The cold, polished marble of the grand ballroom not only reflected the light of thousands of crystals, but also the moment a man's entire world shattered. Arthur Sterling believed he had orchestrated the perfect life. He had discarded his quiet, simple ex-wife, Ilara, as if she were a passé trend, and now arrived at the year's most exclusive event, the Beaumont Foundation Gala, with his dazzling new mistress, Serafina, on his arm. He was ready to consolidate his status among the elite, but he forgot a crucial rule of high society. The most powerful pieces on the board are often the ones that move in silence. The air in the Goya Hall was not just air. It was a pressurized substance, dense with the aroma of old money, the lineage, new ambition, the foreign investors, and the intoxicating perfume of 1,000 jasmines. The annual Beaumont Foundation Gala was, without question, the crown jewel of the New York social calendar. To be invited meant you were somebody. To be ignored meant you were the rest of the world. Ilara Vance, for the first time in 6 years, was somebody again. She had arrived alone, her name a discreet addition to the guest list, secured not by her past connection to the man whose name was carved in marble on the building's exterior, but by her own quiet, multi-million-dollar donation. She wore a simple midnight blue gown from a young designer no one knew yet, and her only jewelry was the vintage sapphire earrings left to her by her grandmother. She was elegant, restrained, and completely invisible. Until she wasn't. Arthur Sterling presided over the scene near the immense canvas of Las Meninas, a bronze pharaoh in a tailored suit. Clinging to his arm was Serafina Hayes, his new wife of 6 months. Serafina was a cyclone of blinding white feathers and Cartier diamonds, every one of her movements calculated for the lens of Hello magazine. Ilara had tried to avoid them. She had made her donation, exchanged pleasantries with the museum director, and planned a quiet exit. But Serafina had spotted her. Like a panther stalking a fawn, her eyes narrowed, and a cruel, beautiful smile spread across her face. She glided toward her, dragging Arthur in tow. "Ilara, I barely recognized you. You look so simple. It's brave," Serafina cooed, her French accent lilting with mockery. Ilara inclined her head. "Serafina. Arthur. Arthur, darling, isn't she brave?" Serafina continued, letting her hand settle protectively over her slightly bulging abdomen. News that had flooded the tabloids that very morning. The air crackled. Serafina leaned in, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, yet loud enough for the small circle of nearby donors and reporters to overhear. "I feel so blessed," Serafina said, stroking the bump, "to be able to give Arthur what he's always deserved, a legacy, an heir. It's the most important thing a woman can do, isn't it?" Ilara's face remained a mask of polite indifference. "I believe there are many ways to build a legacy, Serafina." Serafina laughed, a crystalline, brittle sound. "Oh, of course, for those who can't do it naturally." She looked Ilara up and down with a flash of feigned pity in her eyes. "Your life must be so silent. So much time, so much money, and no little heirs to show for it. It's a shame you could never give him this." She paused dramatically. "Some women are just incomplete." The words hung suspended, a deliberate, poisonous strike. Everyone present held their breath. They all knew the story, or the story Arthur had sold them, the tragic, barren first wife. Ilara's eyes did not go to Serafina. They locked onto Arthur. She expected him, the man she had known for 2 decades, the man she had elevated, the man she had protected, to stop this, to show a shred of decency. Arthur Sterling met her gaze, and a flicker of something crossed his eyes. Annoyance? No, it was recognition. And then he did the one thing that would seal his fate. He laughed. It was a small sound, a dismissive, condescending puff of air. He embraced Serafina's waist and pulled her closer. "Be nice, darling," he murmured, loud enough for all to hear. "It's not her fault she's barren." The word barren echoed. It wasn't a whisper. It was a sentence. The small crowd visibly relaxed. The king had spoken. The joke was permitted. The ex-wife was fair game. But Ilara Vance did not cry. She did not flush with shame. A strange, glacial calm settled over her. The pain that had lived in her chest for years did not dissipate. It crystallized. It went from a dull ache to a hard diamond point. She looked at Serafina, the shallow, cruel girl who thought she had won. Then she looked at Arthur, the man who had just confirmed he was a coward. She smiled, a tiny, cold smile that did not reach her eyes. "You are going to regret that laugh, Arthur," she said, her voice clear and low, cutting through the murmurs. "Both of you." She did not wait for a response. Head held high, she turned and walked away, her simple dress flowing behind her like the robes of a queen. She swept past Carmen Torres, the star reporter for Hello magazine, who was furiously scribbling in her notebook, having completely forgotten about fashion. Arthur Sterling watched her go, a flicker of unease beneath his bravado. But Serafina just laughed again, louder this time. What's she going to do? Write a sad poem about it? In his arrogance, Arthur had forgotten the first rule of his own success. Ilara Vance never bluffed, and she never, ever lost. Act 2. The truth behind the lie. The drive back to her penthouse was silent. Her chauffeur, a man who had been with her for 10 years, knew better than to ask if she had a good night. Ilara didn't go to bed. She walked into her study, a room overlooking Central Park, whose walls were lined not with art, but with architectural blueprints and framed patents. She poured a single glass of Ron Zacapa XO, sat in her leather chair, and let the mask drop. The tears that flowed were not for the insult. They were for the fool she had been. Barren. The word was a lie, a thick, suffocating blanket of a lie she had woven herself, a lie she had agreed to wear like a shroud to protect him. Her mind flashed back 12 years. They weren't Arthur Sterling, the Titan, and Ilara, the discreet wife. Back then, they were just Arthur and Ellie, working out of a rented garage in Palo Alto. He was the salesman, the visionary with the $1 million smile. She was the brain. Ilara Vance wasn't just a socialite. She held dual degrees from the Politecnico di Milano in structural engineering and computer science, the core technology that Sterling Construction was built upon. A revolutionary biosynthetic material now found in everything from the city's newest skyscrapers to defense drones. Wasn't Arthur's. It was hers. It stemmed from her postgraduate thesis. He had convinced her to put the company in his name. "It looks better," he had said. "A strong man out front. We're a team, Ellie. What's mine is yours." She had believed him, and as the company grew, she had retreated, letting him take the credit. She loved the work, not the spotlight. Then came the desire for a family, or more accurately, Arthur's desire for an heir. They tried for 2 years. Nothing. Then came the appointments, the sterile, white rooms of the fertility clinics, the invasive questions, the pitying looks from the nurses. Ilara remembered the exact moment the lie began. A consultation at the Dexius Clinic in Barcelona. Dr. Elena Cruz, the country's top reproductive endocrinologist. The folder with the test results. Cruz hadn't looked at Ilara. She had looked at Arthur. "The test results are conclusive," Dr. Cruz had said softly. "Mrs. Sterling, your fertility is perfectly normal. Excellent, in fact." Arthur had smiled with a "I knew it" self-satisfaction until the doctor continued. "Mr. Sterling, the problem is not your wife. Your tests show extreme complications. Azoospermia, 0 viable count. It is congenital." She paused. "To be clear, Mr. Sterling, you are biologically sterile. You can never father children." Ilara remembered the silence, the sound of the wall clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. She felt relief. It wasn't her. After years of feeling like a failure, it wasn't her. But Arthur. Arthur had shattered. His arrogance, his swagger, all dissolved. He didn't see a medical diagnosis. He saw an invalidation. "That's impossible," he had hissed. "Your test is wrong. Run it again." "We ran it 3 times, Mr. Sterling. This can't get out," Arthur had stammered, pale. "My father, my board, they see me as a leader. This would ruin me. A Sterling who can't produce an heir. It's a joke." Ilara had watched the man she loved dissolve into a paranoid, terrified boy. He had looked at her, his eyes pleading. "Ellie, please. No one can know. This will destroy the company. It will destroy us." And in that moment, she had made the choice that would define her life. She had taken his hand. "They won't know," she had said. "It's me. I will take the blame. I'm the one who can't." She had sacrificed her reputation, her truth, her very identity to shield his fragile ego. Their divorce, years later, was a quiet, amicable affair. The narrative was already established. Arthur desperately wanted a family, and the poor, barren Ilara couldn't give him one. He had been generous in the settlement, but the settlement was the second lie. Ilara hadn't wanted his money. She had wanted her freedom, but she wasn't foolish. She held a crucial piece of leverage, the original patents for her biosynthetic technology. She agreed to license the core patents to Sterling Construction for a nominal fee. The license was tied, inextricably, to a 20-page ironclad, non-disparagement and confidentiality agreement. He could never speak of his condition. She could never speak of hers. She paid him to shut up. She paid him to take the blame. And tonight, with a laugh, with a word, barren, in front of a Hello magazine reporter, he had broken the contract unilaterally. Ilara finished her rum. The ice clinked in the empty glass. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. He hadn't just mocked her. He hadn't just called her barren. He had set her free. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. It rang once. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady. "It's Ilara. Wake up. We have work to do." Pause for interaction. Do you think Ilara did the right thing by taking the blame to protect Arthur, or was her sacrifice the root of her own pain? Leave your opinion on Ilara's sacrifice in the comments. Act 3. Serafina's Trap. Serafina Hayes. Sterling admired her reflection in the surface of her penthouse elevator. The diamonds, the dress, the glow of pregnancy. Everything was perfect. She had won. She had vanquished the ghost of Ilara Vance. She swept into their immense apartment, kicking off her Louboutins. Arthur was already at the bar, pouring a stiff brandy. "Well, that was fun," Serafina chirped, kissing his cheek. "Did you see her face? I thought she was going to turn to dust." "You went a little far, don't you think?" Arthur growled, not looking at her. The unease he had felt at the gala was growing. Ilara was not reactive. Her quiet, "You are going to regret that," felt less like a threat and more like a weather forecast. "Nonsense, darling," Serafina said, running her hands over his shoulders. She needed to be put in her place. Everyone needed to see that I am the present, and she is the pathetic past. I am the one giving you a child, the sterling heir. Arthur softened, his hand going to her stomach. The heir. Yes, that's all that matters. Serafina smiled, but it was a wolf's smile. She wasn't just a trophy wife. She was an opportunist who had been waiting her whole life for such a big score. But her victory rested on a far more dangerous lie than Ilara's. Serafina was pregnant, but the child was not Arthur's. The real father was currently sitting on the Sterling construction board, watching his cousin with a hungry patience. Julian Sterling, Arthur's younger, shrewder, and far more ruthless cousin. Serafina's affair with Julian had begun 6 months before she ever met Arthur. Julian was her long game. Arthur was just the shortcut. The plan was simple and brutal. Julian knew Arthur's secret. He had been investigating for years for leverage and had found a disgruntled former assistant who recalled the silenced medical crisis years ago. He suspected the sterility. "You are the Trojan horse, Serafina," Julian had told her in a stolen moment on the Riviera. "Get him to marry you. Get pregnant with my child. He will be so desperate for an heir he'll never question the timeline. He'll announce it to the world. And once he does, he's trapped." The plan was for Serafina to discover Arthur's infertility after the baby was born, declare the child a miracle from a sperm donor she had used out of desperation, and paint Arthur as a monster for lying to her. In the ensuing chaos, Julian would trigger a no-confidence vote on the board, using Arthur's fraud as leverage, and take over the company. The baby, their baby, would be the sterling heir, and he and Serafina would control the entire fortune. But tonight, Serafina had gotten cocky. The gala, the public humiliation of Ilara, that had been her idea, a spontaneous, petty power play. "She is irrelevant, Arthur," Serafina insisted, refilling his glass. "She's a sad, childless woman who designs buildings or whatever. She's nothing. We are everything." Arthur drank, the brandy burning his throat. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. He had built his entire identity on being the strong one, the fertile one, the king. Ilara's silent sacrifice had been the very foundation of his empire. He had just smashed it with a hammer. Meanwhile, across town, Serafina's phone vibrated. A text message from a blocked number. "Idiot! You didn't just poke the bear, you poked the dragon. This was not the plan. Fix it." It was from Julian. Serafina's blood ran cold. She looked at Arthur, who was now staring out the window, lost in his own uncertain thoughts. She had thought she was playing him, but standing there, in her $1,000,000 dress, a chill went through her. What if Ilara wasn't the only ghost in this penthouse? What if, in her haste to win a small, petty battle, She had just started a war she wasn't prepared for. She wanted to be the queen. She was starting to suspect she was only a pawn. Act 4, the Foundation's revocation. He didn't just breach the contract, Marcus. He voided it. Ilara was seated in the glass-walled conference room of Marcus Thorne's law firm. It was 3 a.m. The table was covered with a copy of her original licensing agreement, her divorce settlement, and a single grainy video from the gala that was already circulating on gossip blogs. Marcus Thorne, a man who charged $2,000 an hour and was worth every penny, pressed a button. A large screen lit up, showing the video. Serafina, the incomplete gesture. Arthur. Laughter. It's not her fault she's barren. Marcus, a man who had seen corporate titans gutted over a single misplaced comma, steepled his hands. He said the word, barren, in public, in front of hello. Reporter Carmen Torres, no less. That is a clear breach of Section 4, Subclause A, the Non-Disparagement Covenant. Exactly, Ilara said, her voice devoid of emotion. And Section 12, Clause C. Which states, Marcus read, a slow smile spreading across his face. It says, a breach of the non-disparagement covenant by either party voids all associated agreements, including the 2018 Sterling Vance Patent Licensing Agreement. At the non-breaching party's discretion, he looked up, feeling the full weight of her words. Ilara, the Sterling Vance Patent License. That's not just a patent. That is the patent. The Vance synth material. It is the core technology for 92% of Sterling Construction's product line. It is the material for his new defense contracts, the Alcazar line. It is the nucleus of his entire €80 billion valuation, Ilara stated, as if commenting on the weather. Marcus leaned back. My God, Ilara, you licensed it to him? Why? For €1 a year, and his silence, and he just, with a laugh, handed it all back to you. Marcus began to pace, his mind buzzing. He didn't just insult you, Ilara. He just committed corporate suicide. What do you want to do? This was the moment. She could sue him for damages, take a massive settlement, ruin him in the press. But Ilara wasn't interested in his money. She was interested in her work. When we divorced, Ilara said, I took a small settlement, but I also started a new company silently, Vance Technologies. It's been operating in stealth mode for 5 years. I've been improving the patent. I've created the Vance Synth 2.0. It's 50% stronger, 30% lighter, and 100% mine. Marcus stopped pacing. Ilara, what are you saying? Arthur's company is based on obsolete product. He just doesn't know it yet. And as of 8 a.m. this morning, he no longer even has the license to use that product. She slid a document across the table. I don't want to sue him for money, Marcus. I want to acquire. Marcus read the document. It was a proposal, a hostile takeover bid. You're going to use the patent violation to force a breach, he whispered, realizing the audacity. You're not going to sue him for damages. You're going to claim the assets built on your stolen intellectual property. You're going to take over the whole company. Not the whole company, Ilara said, standing and walking to the window. The sun was just beginning to streak the Madrid sky purple. The whole company is bloated, inefficient, and built on his ego. I only want the Alcazar Defense Division, the R&D labs, the parts that were mine from the beginning. He will fight, Marcus warned. The board will fight. Let them fight, Ilara said, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. They are about to find out that their entire empire is built on a foundation that I am about to revoke. Send the first letter at 8:30 a.m. A cease and desist order to all Sterling construction manufacturing plants, effective immediately for patent infringement. That will paralyze his global operations. The stock will. Yes, it will, Ilara said. And a second letter, she continued, to the board of directors. An emergency meeting tomorrow. Tell them Ms. Vance has a proposal to save them from the ruin their CEO just caused. Marcus looked at the woman before him. This was not the quiet, barren ex-wife the world thought it knew. This was an architect, and she had just drawn the blueprints for the most brutal and elegant execution he had ever seen. He shouldn't have laughed, Ilara, Marcus said. No, Ilara nodded, watching the city awaken. He shouldn't have. Act 5. The Sterling Earthquake. The first tremor hit at 9:01 a.m. Arthur Sterling was in his private gym when his phone began to vibrate so violently it nearly fell off the treadmill. He ignored it. It was his COO, Robert. Robert could wait. The second tremor hit at 9:15 a.m. when he walked into his own company's operations room. The atmosphere was a tomb. The massive news ticker on the wall, usually a sea of green, was a cascade of blood red. 2250, PDN 31.7, PDN 40, 10. What the hell is going on? Arthur roared, grabbing the nearest analyst. We don't know, sir, the young man stammered. A cease and desist order just hit the newswire. All our manufacturing plants, China, Germany, Madrid, they're shutting down. It's a patent dispute. The stock, it's in free fall. Patent dispute. With whom? That's the thing, sir, the analyst said, his face white. The filing. It's from Vance Technologies. We don't know who they are. But Arthur knew. He didn't run to his office. He teleported. He slammed the door shut, his hands shaking. Vance. It couldn't be. She didn't own. She wasn't. His private line rang. It was Marcus Thorne. You can't do this, Ilara! He roared into the phone, skipping all formalities. This is insane. You'll destroy us. You'll destroy yourself. Your equity is tied up in this. Marcus Thorne's voice was impossibly calm. Good morning, Arthur. I'm afraid Ms. Vance is no longer a shareholder. She sold her remaining shares over 6 months ago at peak value. Clever. Really. It's as if she knew an unstable element might compromise the company's integrity. You, Arthur couldn't breathe. She's bluffing. This is blackmail. How much does she want? 10 million? 100? Ms. Vance is not interested in your money, Arthur. She's interested in your property. The cease and desist order is real. You have 24 hours to halt all production using her intellectual property, which, if I recall correctly, is everything. The board has been notified. They meet tomorrow at 10 sharp. I advise you to attend. The line clicked dead. Arthur slumped into his chair. Barren. A word. A laugh. The third tremor hit at noon. Carmen Torres's article for Hello hit online. It wasn't a gossip column. It was a corporate character assassination. It was titled, The King's Laugh, How Arthur Sterling's Hubris Just Cost Him an Empire. It didn't just report the insult. It analyzed it. It painted Serafina as a cheap, cruel usurper. It painted Arthur not as a king, but as a weak, pathetic man hiding behind his new wife's skirts while mocking the woman who built his kingdom. It recontextualized everything. Suddenly, all the old stories of the barren wife looked like what they were, a misogynistic smear campaign. At 2:00 p.m., PDN stock was suspended. The company had lost 40% of its value. Billions. Erased. The fourth tremor was personal. He stormed back into the penthouse. Serafina was in the living room, on the phone with her publicist, shrieking. "What do you mean? Hello, won't take my call? I am... Get out," Arthur whispered, his voice trembling with a rage so cold it terrified her. "What? Arthur, darling, it's just a silly article." "You," he said, advancing on her. "This was you, your petty, stupid act. You had to poke her. You had to win." "I was defending you," Serafina shrieked, backing away. "You weren't defending me. You were starting a forest fire. Do you have any idea what she's done?" He grabbed a priceless Ming vase, one Alara had bought, and hurled it against the wall. It shattered. She's suing us," Serafina whimpered. "Worse," he roared. "She's not suing us. She's revoking." He didn't even understand the full scope, but he knew it was bad. The patents, the company, all of it is tied to her. Serafina's mind raced. "Julian, the plan, this is too soon." "The baby," she tried, her hand going to her stomach. "Arthur, the stress, the air." "I don't care about the heir," he screamed. "What good is an heir if he inherits nothing?" He grabbed her arm. "You're going to fix this. You're going to call her. You're going to apologize. You're going to beg her." Serafina looked at him, at this pathetic, broken man. Her only anchor, his power, was gone, and in its place was a terrified bully. She just stared at him, her own panic mounting. The plan was in ruins. Julian hadn't returned her text in hours. The man who had laughed 24 hours ago was gone. The man before her was weeping. Act 6. The execution at Sterling Tower, the boardroom on the 80th floor of Sterling Tower, was a cathedral of glass and fear. The board members, old industry titans, tech billionaires, and retired generals, were assembled. One chair was empty at the head of the table. Arthur was seated on the right, looking like he had aged 20 years. Serafina was nowhere to be seen. Julian Sterling was sitting at the far end, his face a perfect, unreadable mask. "This is an outrage," Arthur blustered, though his voice was weak. "A marital dispute. It's a bitter woman. It is a woman who just cost us 30 billion euros in 8 hours, Arthur." General Garrido, a man who ran the Alcázar Defense Division, growled. "I have a call from the Ministry of Defense screaming about national security. Our contracts are frozen. Explain that. We are negotiating." The back doors of the room burst open. Alara Vance walked in, flanked by Marcus Thorne and a team of forensic accountants. She wore a white pantsuit, sharp as a razor. She looked like an avenging angel. "Ms. Vance," General Garrido said, rising, "you do not belong on this board." "No," Marcus Thorne said, his voice filling the room. "But her new company, Vance Technologies, does. As of this morning, Vance Technologies has acquired a 30% stake in Sterling Construction, bought on the open market at a significant discount. She is now the single largest shareholder. She has the right to be here." The board stared. Arthur looked ready to vomit. "Good morning, gentlemen," Alara said, her voice cool and clear. She took the empty seat at the head of the table. Arthur's seat. "Let's dispense with the formalities," she said. 20 years ago, I invented a material called Vance Synth. I allowed Mr. Sterling to build a company around it. In his name, in exchange for his silence on a delicate personal matter." She paused, and her eyes found Arthur's. "He broke that agreement. He called me Baron at a party," Alara said, and for the first time, every person in that room heard the story from her side. A term he knew to be false. A lie he created. A lie I carried for him for 15 years to protect his ego, his condition. The board fell silent. Condition? A member whispered. Arthur Sterling is, and always has been, sterile, Ilara stated flatly. The gasp in the room was deafening. Arthur was exposed. The king was not just naked, he was a fraud. Which, Ilara continued, her gaze sweeping the table, leads us to a fascinating secondary problem. Her eyes landed on Julian, and then, for the first time, she acknowledged the elephant in the room. Serafina, she said, though the woman wasn't there. His new wife, who, according to the tabloids, is pregnant. The room went from silent to a black hole. Arthur's head snapped up. He looked at Julian. Julian merely smiled. The board members, men who lived and died by calculation, did the math simultaneously. Sterile man, plus pregnant wife. It appears, Ilara said, Mr. Sterling's legacy is not his own. Arthur looked at Julian. The betrayal, the total betrayal, finally landed. The affair, the baby, the stock play. It was a coup. Julian! You, Arthur choked out. Julian finally spoke. It was a good plan, Arthur, but you got sloppy. You let your ego get in the way. So, Ilara cut in, reclaiming the room. Here is the situation. Your CEO is a fraud. Your heir is an imposter. And your entire company is guilty of massive patent infringement. As of now. She pressed a button. The main screen lit up. This, she said, is Vance Synth 2.0. It is the technology I've been perfecting. It is what the market truly wants. It makes the material you are all using obsolete. She offered them a choice. Option A, you do nothing. My cease and desist stands. Sterling Construction goes bankrupt by Friday. You all lose everything. I build my company on your ashes. She paused. Option B, you vote. Right now. You remove Arthur Sterling as CEO. You remove Julian Sterling from the board. I do not work with traitors. You give me a controlling stake, 51%. You appoint me chairwoman of the board and CEO. In exchange, I will license Vance Synth 2.0 to this company. I will save the Alcazar contracts. I will save your fortunes. General Garrido did not hesitate. All those in favor of removing Arthur Sterling as CEO? All hands shot up, except Julian's and Arthur's. All those in favor of removing Julian Sterling from the board? All hands. All those in favor, the general said, of appointing Ms. Ilara Vance as chairwoman and CEO? The vote was unanimous. Arthur Sterling simply stood there, an empty shell. He had lost his company, his wife, his fake child, and his legacy. All for one laugh. Ilara stood up. Thank you, gentlemen. The new era of this company starts now. My team is securing the 80th floor. She looked at the two cousins. Arthur, Julian, security will escort you out. Ilara walked up to Arthur, who was staring blankly at the table. She leaned in, her voice a whisper only he could hear. Who is incomplete now, Arthur? Epilogue. The architect of thousands. The collapse of Arthur and Serafina was swift and deserved. Arthur ended up a pathetic figure in the Gold Mile bars, a living monument to his own stupidity, drinking brandy and mumbling about his barren ex-wife who had robbed him. No one listened. Serafina, betrayed by Julian, who was also neutralized by Alara's non-compete clauses, was last spotted by a hello photographer at Atocha station, arguing with a bus depot clerk. As the old world burned, Alara Vance was building. Under her leadership, the company didn't just stabilize, it soared. Forbes put her on the cover. The billion-dollar architect, the woman who built, was betrayed and built it better. A year after the boardroom execution, Alara received a call from Dr. Elena Cruz, the endocrinologist. "Alara," the doctor said softly, "I just read your profile in El País, Woman of the Year. I just wanted to apologize for all those years. I was bound by ethics, by his threats, but I regret being a part of that lie." Alara paused, looking out from her new glass-walled office at the city that was now truly hers. "Elena," she said, her voice warm, "you were not part of his lie. You were the only person in that room who told me the truth. You have nothing to apologize for. Still, what he did to you, what he called you, it's just a word, Elena," Alara said, "and it no longer holds any power." Alara's new project launch was not at the Prado. It was at a plot of land that had been vacant for a decade in a working-class district. It was a cold, bright day. The crowd was not socialites in feathers, but community leaders, foster parents, and 100 noisy, excited children in bright blue hard hats. Alara Vance stepped up to the podium. She wore a smart, practical wool coat, her hair pulled back. She looked happy. After her speech about the new building, a reporter called out. It was Carmen Torres, the hello reporter. She was no longer snarky. She was humbled. "Ms. Vance," she shouted. "Carmen Torres, hello. A year ago, I saw you humiliated. Now you are the most powerful woman in Madrid. You've rebuilt an empire. But I have to ask, after all this, do you ever regret it? Not having children of your own?" The crowd fell silent. This was the question, the one that had defined her. Alara smiled, a genuine, bright, unshakable smile. She walked to the front of the podium, her eyes finding the children in the front row. "Thank you for that question, Carmen," she said, her voice clear and resonating in the cold air. "It is a question that has followed me my whole life. In whispers, in pitying glances, and at parties, in very loud, cruel jokes. For 15 years, I lived in silence. I allowed a narrative to be written for me, a story of what I lacked, a story of being incomplete, a story of being barren. I did it to protect a man's fragile ego. I thought that was loyalty. I was wrong. My ex-husband, and men like him, believe a legacy is something simple and primal. It is blood. It is a name. It is a son. They believe a woman's worth is tied only to what she can produce. They are tragically mistaken." She spread her hands, pointing to the building plans behind her. "A legacy is not about producing. It is about building. A true legacy is not about what you leave behind in your blood. It is about what you leave behind in the world. It is about the foundations you lay for others. Today, we are standing on what was once called barren land. It was overlooked. It was underestimated. It was forgotten. It has much in common with me. And today, we will plant a seed. Not a seed of ego. Not a seed of blood. A seed of opportunity. A seed of knowledge. A seed of hope." She pointed to the sign being unveiled. The Alara Vance Children's Center, an academy for STEM, art, and leadership for the next generation. "My predecessor," she said, "thought an heir was something he could buy or create through a lie. But these are my heirs," she gestured to the children. "This center, the promise. This is my family. This is my legacy. So, to answer your question, Carmen, do I regret not having a son? No, because I have realized I am not the mother of one. I am the architect of thousands. I was never barren. I was just busy building a better future. She turned, picked up a golden shovel, and plunged it into the cold earth. The crowd erupted. The camera flashes this time were not for a scandal. They were for a beginning. As she lifted the first scoop of dirt, a little girl in a hard hat ran up and handed her a slightly wilted daisy. Alara Vance took the flower, her eyes shining, and laughed. A real, full, joyful laugh. It was the only one that mattered. In a reflection, and there ends our story. A laugh at a party, a moment of cruel public mockery, became the trigger for the greatest comeback in the history of the Madrid elite. The new wife, who thought she had it all, learned that a baby is not a weapon. It is a person. And the billionaire, who thought he was a king, learned that the woman he called barren was actually the only one who could grow something real. Alara Vance proved that a legacy is not about what you produce. It is about what you build. What did you think of Alara's final revenge? Do you think it was karmic justice, or was it too cold and calculating? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of retribution and triumph, please show your support. Give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to see a good comeback, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. We have new dramas arriving every week.